Sunday the 17th of October 2004, and we're talking to Dad, Arthur Henry Jephcott, about his life story. And previously we've talked about up to around about the year 1942, and we're now finding Dad in India, and we're really going to start the story at the point where Kennedy Peak comes into it. So tell us about Kennedy Peak, Dad. What is Kennedy Peak, for a start?
It was a mountain looking down in, I wish I haven't got a map, have you?
No.
Oh, I'm stupid.
It's in India.
No, Kennedy Peak is in the,
Burma?
Burma, yes. It's in the mountains of the
The Himalayas.
Himalayas.
And what was its relevance to you and the British forces generally?
Well, I'm trying to remember the divisions at the time. Just give me time. Well, what happened? Just a moment. The India side, Assam side of the Brahmaputra was where we had moved up from India. I've gone past the place, haven't I, where we moved up behind the 19th Indian
Yes.
Div. That's when we were moving up, and yes, it's going to be mixed up there. Oh,
Well, don't worry, we can pull it to pieces. So you're moving forward.
yes. Yeah. Well, we were stationed. That's right. I'd been in. Now, why did I go into? Yeah. There was a period of time when the 17th Indian Division was in a hasty retreat. Back to Infal.
And what was the state of your health? Were you okay?
No, the 17th Indian Div at that time that was their first retreat that they were coming back on, because we went to relieve them actually. Oh, I'm sorry, Jess, I've got to think about it.
Okay, well let's forget about that side of it then. So, bit of humour then. There was a story you were telling us about the officer's bath was put on a jeep. Now, where was that?
Oh,
what happened
well,
there?
that's this time.
Who was the officer and what was that all about?
Well, we were at Kennedy Peak at that time. At Kennedy Peak that time, and General Cowan was the chappie, and also his lordship and the ugly mug. Commander-in-Chief of the Slim, yeah. Slim was in there in charge, and we were supposed to be doing well. Got to grips with the Japs who hadn't entered into Infal at the time. They were the Rangoon side of the Kennedy Peak.
So what about the officer's bath then?
Well, I'm coming to it this moment. And we were told that we were doing extremely well and got the upper hand of the Japs. That was in the morning parades, that we would do very well indeed. But in the afternoon we were formed in line and told that we had had a adverse accounts, you know, that we weren't doing so good, and we were to dump all the unnecessary kit of our own and only take what we could carry ourselves, and everything had to be dumped. Jeeps would be taken with us, transport naturally, and the jeeps were to be used for equipment, only equipment, and we were to make for Infal via 101, yeah, it was 101, Milestone, which was a big dump, equipment dump for our units. And it was a 36-mile, I think it was 36-mile trek.
On foot?
On foot, yeah. Bit muddy, but it was a real stinker. I was driving my Jeep with my radio in it and some canvas equipment, and Corporal George was in the column, and we came across an officer's canvas bath, and Corporal George said, "What the hell's this? This is not allowed." And he just got the canvas bath and slung it over the cub's side, and that was the end of that. It was interesting to know that there was never any inquiry made about it. In Freeland was well aware that he shouldn't have had that on board, and that was the end of that.
So that was him.
But we were on this trek back, and some of the chaps were so dead beat that they lay down in the mud track just to have a rest. But we eventually made it to 101, and there were a lot of trucks, vehicles there, motorbikes, mainly Nortons and matchless there, but all the rotary arms had been disposed of by the Japs. They'd left all the Japs had been there, had raided it, and I think that was what started the retreat, really. They got behind us. Anyway, they mobilised all the transport of ours that was in the supply dump. And we eventually got there. But of course the place was wrecked. The bamboo buildings and different places, anything that was any good was destroyed. And we then had equipment, repair equipment flown in, and the vehicles, trucks, motorbikes, anything that was repairable was mobilised. And that was the first time I'd ever driven a motorbike in my life. And they gave me a Norton, 500 Norton to drive. And it was terrible road, mountain road, sheer drops on the left-hand side, the track. And anyway, when we did eventually set off, making direct for Infal, plains of Infal, I was puffing along on this old Norton I got, and I passed a dispatch rider, Ginger Edwards, I think his name was, who had conked out on his Douglas. Oh, he'd got a Douglas machine, yes. That came spontaneously. And he couldn't get it going. So I stopped but kept the bike running and asked if he was all right. Could I be of any help? And he said no, he'd be all right. As we talked, a shell came over and hit the cud side, just above our heads, and I didn't wait for any more. I went as fast as my abilities were possible on my old bike, and I hadn't gone very far before this Douglas whipped past me and left me standing. And he managed to get his bike going with that spur behind him. And anyway, we eventually, my glasses were broken. I only had one optic, but it sufficed for me to see. And we got into harbour in the darkness of the evening, and we had to go through a small river. And it was more a brook than a river, but it was called a river. And we got a chap directing vehicles to give them a harbour to rest up for the night. But it was in the open air on the bare ground with a canvas canopy thrown up roughly, just to put a covering over us. But I got a signal to ease up, take it steady and turn off on the river bank. And as I turned, I toppled over and fell into the bloody river and got wet through. So I had a wet night.
Where was your radio through all this? Where was your radio?
my radio was in the Jeep,
Mm.
because it was changed. I think George, Corporal George, was driving it.
Mm.
Anyway, that doesn't matter. But anyway, I took over the motorbike again next morning. Miserable old time, and but we made Infal the following day. Got to Infal, and I can't. It's so long ago now. I can't.
Well, it is a long time ago, over 60 years ago.
Yeah. But anyway, we established ourselves, and
So what came next?
got to Infal. Well, the 17th Indian Div, you've got to bear in mind, we were at Kennedy Peak, my unit, my section, when we started the trek.
Mm.
But a big part of the 17th Indian Div was coming up behind us, so they were still to come in and places like that. But they were active fighting on a rear guard. Anyway, we got back to Infal and established ourselves at the 23rd Indian Div, that was, and got established. It was then that I was sent all the way back to India on my own. There's a little bit missing there, and I can't remember what it was. I know I finished up down by the Brahmaputra and got across the Brahmaputra and got to a transport area where I managed to get train transport, and I ultimately got through to Mao, because I was on. They sent me on a advanced wireless theory course at Mao, the training school there, and I got through the course except the last, I think, 3 or 4 days, and I felt so terrible. And I can see myself now in bed in the sleeping quarters, and they decided I'd got malaria. Oh, I know, I did feel bad. Anyway, they'd got a hospital there at Mao, being a big depot, so they put me in the hospital and gave me
Was this Meppequin?
Meppequin tablets
Mm.
to take it. But anyway, I had a rough time, and I had a very serious time. And it was a case of touch and go with me. And it was a Saturday. Funny, I can remember that.
Mm.
And I came out to, I suppose it was, I became delirious, I suppose, because that was quite a common thing with malaria. And when I came, I recovered from that. I can remember malaria. I was there, I was unconscious, and it was funny. All I could remember, think of and imagine was Gillette razor blades, all joined together, one on the end of the other, not separate. I couldn't separate them. I couldn't separate them.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, hallucinating. And that's funny. The other day I thought I'd never hallucinated before, but I had. But that came to. But anyway, when I did eventually open my eyes, my mattress was wet through. That was from perspiration and that. And there was I think she was a lieutenant nurse, Red Cross nurse. There were 3 officers and 1 orderly around my bed. And I remember one of them saying something that I'd broken the fever or something like that. I won't say the other words, but that's what he meant. And then they all left me. And, well, the orderly stayed and the sergeant, you know, to keep an eye on me. But anyway, I began to recover then. And anyway, I was too late to finish the few days course that I should be on, so that had to be cancelled. And the chappie that came out of hospital with me looked at me and said, "Blimey, Jeff, you're not yellow. Look yellow." I said, "I feel really yellow, you know." I still felt bad. But anyway, I came out. And this is not accurate, I'm telling you, but the sense of it was true.
So then what? Where do we go from there?
Any case, I always made a point of getting back to my unit myself, my own unit. I never went to a transit camp or anything like that, because you had a habit of being sent off somewhere as a reserve. You know, so additional, you know, extra. And but I can remember I desperately wanted a cup of tea. Oh, I did want a cup of tea. But everywhere I went for a cup of tea was chlorinated. And it was terrible. It was terrible, chlorinated. Any case, I went up and I got back to, where did I get back to now? I got back to, that's the time I got back to, not in Hull. Yeah, I got back to Info.
So when were you doing OP exercises?
Well, I'm coming to that. Coming to that.
So this followed on? This followed on then, did it?
Yeah. And it's probably a bit out of sequence, but, well, I know it's a bit out of sequence. But I shall look at that when I get home. Have a look, I've got some idea. I can see what it's all about. And you can then change it a bit. But I got back to MFAL and reported in the unit. Oh yes, yes, that's right. And I think I spent 3 or 4 days. Yeah, more than that. I spent a little time, not long though, it wasn't a matter of days really, I'm sure, with the unit when, yeah, of course it was. It was about 3 days with the unit, and I stood at the cookhouse fire and I became so unwell, felt so unwell. They got someone to me, and Sergeant Major, it was a bit unsympathetic. But anyway, someone kept on at him and said the bloke was ill, and they got me to a field, to the sick bay. And it was decided I'd got yellow jaundice. So again, they got me back to Kohima by ambulance. And it was there. Now I was in Kohima quite a reasonable time. But it was during this time that that I was in Kohima. Well, I was in Kohima at first, and everything was going well. I was recovering, but I still retained the yellowness and all that, and of course being treated. And in Kohima, they treated you, and when you were well, you were examined various times, and if you were up to a certain standard, you would get medicine on duty. You'd take medicine and you'd carry out duty. But you'd do different things, and they'd gradually get you. You'd have medicine and different levels of work until you were recovered, and then you went through a obstacle course up a side of a bloody half mountain, you know, and things like that to get you fit, make sure that you were fit. And it was such a miserable place, Kohima, and it was the Americans built Kohima, actually the road through, and the tennis court was up there, and the admin block was up there. But it was it was a horrible place, Kohima. And I thought to myself, I'm going to get out of this bloody place. It's the last thing I do, you know. And I did. I managed to get out, get out of it, and back to Infal I went. And when I got back, the 23rd Indian Div were being posted back to Delhi. They all went back to Delhi. And I was kept in the 17th Indian Div. Also, they weren't going all the paperwork to do, posting back for one bloke. So I was kept at Infal, and when I got to Infal, I found, as I say, the 23rd Indian Div had gone, but the Jats had broken through, and the 17th Indian Div had also got back to Infal. That's as far as they got on their retreat. And that is where the Battle of Infal started, and a very vicious battle that was. And I was there with it.
Mm.
And I was lucky, I was bloody lucky, because I got out of Kohima out of the hospital with a few days to spare from the Japs overrunning the place. I was lucky there. And anyway, the battle in Kohima came about, and the West Yorks took the brunt of it, and there was a second div. They brought one or two divs in by plane, you know, and made a stand, and that is where the Jets began to get a thrashing. And then what happened? I had malaria again. I had the second dose of malaria. But I know all my section, I think out of 8 of my section when we first went into Linfell, when we were first preparing for battle, you know. You've got some of it on that tape. Going into battle, 8 in the section, I think I lifted 6 out with malaria. That was in my section alone, small section. And I suppose the other 2, I know I was one of them. I got it eventually, but the malaria was terrible. It was a serious hazard. But anyway, we then began to, yes, we pushed the Japs back. We began to push the old Japos back. It's so hard to remember now, Jess. What was it I was going to tell you about?
Well, we were going to talk about OP.
Oh yes, OP.
Where were you doing that?
That was, I'm on it now. It's, we started to push the Japs back, and that's when we got back to Kennedy Peak, looking down. Then we began to advance into Burma proper, and we formed up there. I was then put out with a field regiment, 25 pounder. That's when I clicked for OPs, and I was with them. And I stayed with them at various, I did a one-on-one outing with the Gurkha Brigade, but not the Gurkha Brigade, but a company. Only to help them out with radio. That was all. For the old Gurkhas. They took care of me. They said, you know, need cheese, Johnny, need cheese, Johnny, and get down, you know, and take care. And we joined up with the 17th HQ. Well, there was a lot of mix-up there, a lot of battle there. But on our flank was the 19th Indian Div at Mandalay. Funny, 19th Indian Div I was stationed with for a time as we moved into Trimble. Armandugger and Trimble Gary, I think it was 2 units I moved into when we moved into Burma proper, and things began to hum. Anyway, I finished up with the 17th again, and we got eventually got down to Mctilla, where I was stationed when I came home. But Mandalay fell. 19th Indian Div beat the hide out of the Jappos. And
I was hoping you were going to tell me a bit about the Nagas.
Nagas, yes, yes.
Where was that? Was that while you were
That's
with the Gurkha unit?
Hmm?
That was while you were with the Gurkha unit, was it?
No. We were. I was in Infal, but at Infal, on our right flank, there was a track called Sulchar Track. Very rough, ragged place, and it was a track up through the mountains. And I can't think of the name of the little town on our flank. But it was suggested by one of the colonels that the track could be put through for supplies to be brought to us, which would be much quicker than coming up from Dimapur and places like that. You know, you could come in direct from India instead of up through
Burma.
Well, parts of Burma, yeah. So we could anyway, we decided that we're going to do recce's from there, and that's when I started to get into the OPs, looking to see where the Jappos were, because it was...
Who was looking? You weren't, were you? You were reporting it, weren't you?
I was reporting it, yeah. Well, I was observing where the positions were, and telling the old CO, the old Brigadier, Barrington Roebeck.
By radio?
By radio, yeah. Well, he was, no, Barrington Roebeck, he was an old blighter really, because I used to have to go back to Divisional HQ each night for shelter. We wouldn't leave me out on my own or with two of us. And anyway, OPs were not a suitable place to be out all night, you know, with just two of you. He would be back in his digs with his backman and all that, you know, and his nice mess where he had nice meals and that. And we got what we could, you know, because we were late for all our meals from the OP. I was every night, I was always late, so I had to scrounge what was left sort of thing. Not quite as bad as that, but I had to go back and I had to get in the dark, complete dark. I say me, I'm talking about me, there was, I don't know what happened to old Charles. Anyway.
You started off telling me about the Nagas, but we haven't got there yet.
No. Oh, no, that's quite right.
Tell me about the Nagas.
Well, all right. Well, anyway, this track going through, they decided that we should have a track through, so they had it recce'd. That's how it started. We started to recce that track through, and not we, the engineers did. And the engineers put a report in that it wasn't possible, wasn't feasible. It wouldn't take the amount of transport that was needed. So this Colonel, bloody name.
Baron de Roebeck.
Oh no, Colonel, not Baron. He was a forgot his rank. Brigadier Baron. Brigadier Baron de Roebeck. And I suppose he wanted to make a name for himself, I should think. Because he decided he'd put a report in that it could be done. And well, he was in it. No, it wasn't him. It was the CEO of the gunners. Got his name.
Anyway, did the track go through or not?
So he decided to, all his men, he would have working on this track. And you had to be careful. Because if you were sent out on a project and he saw you and he thought you weren't doing anything, he'd say, oh, what do you do, signals, or what are you doing, you know, whoever you are. So and so says, well, put that on one side, go and get a shovel and spade and get on with this track, and you'll run the track for the rest of the time. And I got on there on radio, and I spent my time then on radio, and right up on the top of this peak, and I had a Geordie with me. You couldn't understand a bloody word he said, you know, and he couldn't operate a radio set, so he used to keep his eye on the. When I went out on the track, the first time I ever went out on the track, I went out on a full recce with chaps who were going to be stationed at different places. And this stupid bloody officer left me on my own on the track, just on my own. And that was only a track, I suppose, that door to about here.
About 8 foot. About 8 foot wide.
If flat, yeah. And there was a gutter. When I say a gutter, I mean dug out, just with a spade, that carried loose water down, a couple of blinking skulls a little further down, and that is, oh yes, the first day there, they sent, eventually, I think I've been there 2 days, and it was reported back to brigade, to the unit, HQ, that I was up there on my own, and they sent a chap out to me to be with me, because I shouldn't have been on my own. And he was a Scouse, Liverpudlian.
He wasn't a Naga then? He wasn't a Naga then?
No, but just hold your water. And so No, it's a bit out of order here, but anyway, he did the cooking and things like that, and I did the so-called radio operating. He could do some, and there it was. But when I got the Scouse bloke, he couldn't even bloody well cook, never mind about operate a radio set. And that's when I first met Nagas. And how that came about was being there 2-3 days, and
what were Nagas? I know what they are, but you're going to tell the camera.
yes, you can call them. They were based in principle on the Scottish clan system. In other words, they were little communities of their own, in different parts of the mountain ranges.
Tribesmen then?
That's the word I was looking for, tribesmen. They were tribesmen. Not very big blokes, but Kohima Nagas, the ones I'm talking about, and we used to call them cookie Nagas. Anyway, I was trying to get a fire going on this track. And the floor of the track was there, and then just where the door is, there was a little bank up, green bank. And then the mountainside fell away, and that was all bamboos and green stuff. Anyway, I got me back to this, and I was trying to get this fire to go, and I sensed a movement behind me, and I turned around, and there was a bloody Naga standing there. Little fellow, little loincloth on, and he got beads round his neck with I can't remember what was on it. He got some form of beads. I think he had a few teeth on there, and bloody earrings in his ear, nearly as big as that panel in that chair. Big things, and his ear lobes came down. And that knife you had, he got that. He got a little vest on. He wasn't a very big bloke. And he looked at me a bit hard. And I don't think looking back in retrospect, I don't think he could make much of me, and I certainly couldn't make much of him. But he certainly suddenly turned and disappeared into the undergrowth. And now, you've got to bear in mind, these Nagas have been ill-treated by the Japs. And the Japs had taken their wives. And well, you can guess what they were doing with their wives and things like that. And they hated them. Anyway, this Naga, he disappeared into the undergrowth, and I heard some chopping. And presently this bloke came back. He got 2 chunks of bamboo. I suppose they'd be nearly 8 foot across, length, in length. And he got down, and he got the 2 ends of the bamboo together, and he got them lit, got them alight, heated, and I think he used wood to do it. Anyway, he got these bamboos alight, and by signals he showed me that if I wanted a fire, I just push these 2 bamboos together so the ends touched, and blew it, and it burst into flame. And when you finish with it, you just let it smoulder, and it would just smoulder and burn a red ash. So you'd always got a fire. And he made me understand, and he brought me some potatoes, aloes, and brought me some potatoes. And I wasn't long on that track then, but what the unit came up and we all joined together and went up, I think we went up at that time about 6,000 feet. Then eventually we went up to 9,000 feet. But then the unit was together. And it was then we began to associate with the Nagas. And they were very helpful to us, but we never went into their villages. And eventually their women used to come and see us. They trusted us. And I found out afterwards, when we remustered a base for re-equipping, that on one side of the track there were these Nagas, and this Naga was in with them, and I was with our boys on this side, and the interpreter we got by then, he was there, and this Naga said something to the interpreter, and they laughed. And I called to the interpreter, I said, "He was the first Naga I ever saw," and he said, "Yes, you were the first British soldier he ever saw, you know," and that was a coincidence. That we eventually went to the top, 9,000 feet, and the Nagas carried some of our kit up, but they'd go up the river course, not up the...
Not on the track, no.
No, but we went up the track, and they were waiting for us at the top. But they took our gear up on that, thank goodness they did. But we got used to it in the end, you know, the climbing. And from there, the Nagas became headhunters again. And gradually, as things went on, they would bring a head in a box or something like that. By then we'd got a few red caps about, and they didn't like the look of these things, but they had to get used to it. And the Nagas also then, we recruited Nagas to become labourers on putting this track through. And we amazing the things that went on with the Nagas, it really was. The one chap, the old headsman, what happened in the end, the headsman used to supply us with men, Nagas, to do the navvy work. And you had to give we were furnished with a bag of rupees, bright silver rupees. And we paid the Nagas 1 rupee a day, and the headsman 2 rupees a day, and a blanket. And he sat on the fence and just watched the work. But if you didn't get his 2 rupees, you didn't get any men either. And a lot of experiences there. I found it immensely interesting. Anyway, by then there were 3 of us on this post, and the artillery bloke, the gunner that was with us, he did the dynamiting, the blasting, and we used to help him as well, and we used to do some blasting. He'd have responsibility for the rupees because it was the artillery that were doing the actual work, and we had a few rupees out of that. We used to gamble with them at night, and officers as well, they were on the game, and they were all on a fiddle. But anyway, one of the chaps was brought in and was told that he had hurt his foot. Could we do anything for him? So, got to bear in mind, we couldn't talk to the Nagas. We didn't know their lingo. We gradually began to pick some of it up very briefly. I could never understand it. But anyway, that he was brought in, that he'd hurt his... And we had a look at it, and we thought it was, well, it was, the ankle was broken. So I was the one that did the mouthpiece, because this bloody Gordy, he was a ignorant blighter, you know. And I got hold of the headsman, and we got him shoulder lifted down to base, down the track. And the road was, the track was in its infancy then, you know, it was only just been started. But we got this chap down to base. And the unit down below, in Info itself, got him treated, his ankle, and from there they brought every little hurt and things like that to us, you know. And they didn't care what, they didn't know what we gave them, but we gave them an anodine, or not an anodine, the equivalent, aspirin, and we give them a Nephroquine tablet. Anything that headache powder, you know. We give them some salt, cold, I give them some salt, I'd give you the world. And different things like that. And at the end of the week, the headsman would have them all come in the morning to get their, they used to come into our campsite to get their rupees. He'd bring them into there, and they'd all have a little wicker bamboo basket made, because they worked everything in bamboo, everything was made in bamboo. A seat, a bed, anything like. And in these they'd have a little gift for the 2 of us that had given them different things. And they would all salam us. I had a barras salam. Very proud of that, I was. And but every week you had some little gift brought to you for it. And the use of a
machete, yeah.
And the wizard on those, because they would drop I'd drop a tree, and they'd work on it, stand on it, and chop it. And they'd make it as near a square as that post there. In bloody work the way they used to do it, just by chipping it. It was rough, but it was squareness on it. It was first class. And they made me a walking stick. But I went sick from the unit again, malaria, damn it. And I had to leave everything behind. And when I came back to my unit, I found it being pinched, and that's comradeship for you.
That's right, happened all the time. Wonder if that ever survived.
Yes. And that's
Anyway, we're at the end of the tape now, so we can go on for another hour if you like, but I've got to turn this one off now.